what I want to do now is try to create a few modules that are jargon driven. Okay.
Jargon, what did you say, Miles?
Jargon driven.
Okay.
So number one, Kevin, what is EBITDA and why should I care?
EBITDA, whatever you prefer, is a measure of the economic benefit that a company can generate. And specifically, it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. I like to call it dirty cash flow, because the reality is, by adding all of those things back, what you really get is cash flow for the business. So it is specifically, it's a measure of cash flow. It's used frequently in mergers and acquisitions market. You hear this bandied about. Well, we know that companies in that space sell for 6 times EBITDA. So it at worst provides a benchmark. For instance, you come up with a value using some other method, and the value is $5 million. Whereas that benchmark, 6 times EBITDA, the value is $10 million. Doesn't mean one is right and the other is wrong, but what it can mean is maybe you ought to take a closer look at one or the other to try and reconcile them and bring them closer together. So that's why it's important. Generally speaking, at the worst, it's a benchmark. Go ahead.
All right. Is there a more important benchmark?
Well, I believe it's beyond a benchmark. As I mentioned earlier, I call it dirty cash flow. And the reason I call it dirty cash flow is an EBITDA measure, because it's before depreciation and amortization, does not take into consideration the need for capital expenditures. Maybe it's a company that hasn't done the requisite repairs for years and years and years. They've got equipment that's run down, it's ready to break down. The building is falling apart. And so if you look at EBITDA, it doesn't take into consideration the need for capital expenditures. So I believe that the better measure is cash flow, true cash flow, because if you determine true cash flow, you are actually putting a reserve amount in there for capital expenditures. So to me, that is the best measure to look at, true cash flow.
I think Warren Buffett, as opposed to Jimmy Buffett, would agree with you. But that's a different topic.
Yeah.